For today's episode, I'm taking a quick look at the classic Zebco 33 and Zebco Delta Spincasters. Mrs. Outdoors has been wanting to try a Spincaster for fishing while on the kayak. She's admittedly not a pro when it comes to casting in general, so she might really benefit from using a Spincaster setup. Spincasters are a great reel option for someone who wants to spend more time fishing and less time dealing with tangles, knots, and backlashes due to casting mistakes. If there was one thing that stood out to me while testing the Spincasters, it was their ease of use. The first Spincaster we picked up was from Walmart. While they had a lot of options for Spincasters, not many had a quality look to them. We looked through the many options ranging from the kids combos to the most expensive. Based on look, feel, and perceived quality, we ended up choosing the Zebco 33 Tactical. This is basically your classic Zebco 33 with a black paint job. It was priced roughly $35 on the sticker, but ended up only $30 at the register. We loaded up the Zebco 33 Tactical and headed over to our local Field & Stream to check out their inventory. Field & Stream had a better selection of Spincasters. These were definitely not the sub $20 combos that dominated the Walmart shelves. The choice here was a little more difficult. Looking through the options, there were actually a few contenders we considered. A friend of mine actually has this lose combo here, and when I tried it out myself, I've enjoyed it for what it was. In the end though, we decided on another Zebco, this time the Zebco Delta. Its build quality seemed to step above everything else we considered. We took it up to the register, and unfortunately, it was still $60. We loaded up the Zebco Delta, along with the Zebco 33, and headed over to a local pond to see how they work. When holding the Spincasters together, it was clear the Delta's build quality and weight gave it a premium feel. The 33 Tactical was much lighter than the Delta with a clearly thinner housing on the reel. To get started on the testing, I first rigged up some basic tackle on each rod to give a fair comparison on casting ability. For the setup, which was a number 10 hook with a small split shot weight and a bobber. With the Spincasters rigged up, let's do some testing. I wanted to start with the Delta to give it a fair chance with no prior impression from the Tactical. I have not used Spincasters much, so this comparison is going to be directly between these two. I started off by doing some casts with the Delta. At first I was having some issues getting the cast to go straight, as it seemed to need a different casting technique than I was used to. After a couple more tries, I got the hang of it and was getting some good distance on my casts. There were two things that immediately stood out to me with the Delta. The first was that the reeling was buttery smooth. If I'm being honest, it felt smoother than my bait caster and spinning rod. It was very impressive, and I have to hand it to Zebco for how that felt. At first, this had me thinking it could have a place in my own collection. That feeling, however, was fleeting with the other thing that I immediately noticed, and that was how darn slow it was to reel. I didn't realize at the time of purchase, but it has a 2.9 to 1 gear ratio. If you aren't familiar with gear ratios, that is a very, very slow retrieve. Most bait casters have a gear ratio in the 6 to 7 to 1 range, and spinning rods are only slightly slower than that. A full rotation on the Delta barely moved the line, and reeling it in felt like a chore. If you are fishing for crappie and panfish, a slow retrieve can be a really big help. Some fish like their bait presented slowly, so if you have a heavy reeling hand, this can definitely slow you down for that. On the other hand, if you're fishing for species that would benefit from a faster retrieve, or if you make a bad cast and you want to quickly correct it, you have to reel almost twice as long as other reels you're likely used to. For the Delta's reel speed, I'm going to say this is a personal preference. I myself was not a fan of this retrieve speed and felt something like a 4 to 1 would have given it a better all-around speed to work with, but if you're into the slow retrieves, this would be a great option for you. The included Cajun line, as Zebco has branded it, was not good. It didn't want to come off the spool easy with the weight I had on the line, and overall it felt too stiff. Generally, the included line isn't the greatest when included in a rod reel combo anyway, so it wasn't a big deal as it can be easily changed. I'll actually have a video for how to spool a Spincaster out soon. If it's already out, I'm also going to have the link in the description. I gave the Delta a few more casts to get a good feel for it before it was time to try out the 33 Tactical. After spending some time with the Delta, my first impression holding the 33 Tactical again was just how light this was in comparison. By the time I finished with the Delta, I could see how it may cause some fatigue over longer term use. I appreciated how the 33 Tactical felt light as a feather after using the Delta. I gave the 33 Tactical a few casts, and a couple things became apparent with this rod as well. The first was that I could easily get further casts. I don't know if there was a line weight difference between the two, they looked the same to me. They're both using the braided Cajun line, or if I needed to use a heavier tackle on the Delta, but it just felt easier to get distance with the 33 Tactical. The next thing that was obvious was the speed. This reel felt like a rocket after using the Delta. I actually looked it up and it turned out to be a 4.1 to 1 gear ratio. That's almost exactly where I thought the Delta should have been previously in my testing. This made casting and retrieving much faster and more enjoyable. Again, slower retrieve can be helpful for some, but I'd rather have more speed as an available option if needed. With those things being said, there were some issues, the biggest one being build quality. As I said earlier, while lightweight, it bordered on the line of feeling cheap. The housing felt thin and the black coating looked like it could scratch off very easily. The worst thing I found was a literal epoxy spike on the trigger grip that before I noticed really dug into my finger. You can see it here and it was very uncomfortable to use. I know this was likely a manufacturing defect and it won't be included on all the rods, but it's worth mentioning at the very least as something to look out for. If I wasn't able to exchange this for another rod, I suppose I could have sanded it down, but that's not really something anyone is interested in doing on a brand new rod. Okay, time to wrap this up and give my final thoughts. If I had to choose between these two, and we did end up choosing one, I would pick the 33 Tactical. For the price point, you are getting a functional Spincaster setup with an enjoyable retrieve speed and a pretty cool look to it. It may not last years, but it will certainly survive a couple seasons, and for $30, it could easily be replaced if needed. If you were looking for a slower retrieve Spincaster, I would not hesitate to recommend the Delta. It's a great rod for what it is, but I don't think it's for everyone. It could even be a source of frustration for new anglers or those used to faster retrieves. With that being said, the build quality was stellar and it feels like it would last a very long time. In the end, we did end up picking the 33 Tactical and Mrs. Outdoors loves it. She had it out a few times now and it hasn't given her any issues. I think this would be a great rod reel setup for a novice or an intermediary angler who's looking for an easier casting setup. As I mentioned earlier, this was mainly for Mrs. Outdoors to use while we're kayak fishing, and the more time she can spend fishing, the better for all of us. Have you used a Zebco 33 or a Delta before? If so, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you agreed or disagreed with my findings, or if I'm missing something worth noting, please drop a comment below and let's chat about it. I hope you guys found this helpful. If so, let me know by hitting that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing. We're actively trying to grow this channel and your subscription directly helps with that. If you're already subscribed, welcome back. We're always looking for new video ideas, so if you have any, please drop a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.